Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mugwump Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land. Over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley, this is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Hello and welcome to the Docking Bay 77 podcast. I am your host, Dayton Johnson. We are standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, and it's such a fine sight to see. Joining me this evening are a couple of desperados, and we are somewhere on the border. He's more of a Beach Boys fan than the Beatles, but we won't hold that against him. It is Deaf Dave. Welcome back to the pod.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. As always, love talking music. You've got me on Beatles and Beach Boys, but I have to say the Eagles are in my top 3. They're right there. I love the Eagles.
Which is why I asked you to be here. All right. And he's one of the other long-haired freaky people on this podcast. It is Mike Vermillion. How's it going, Mike?
It's going great, Dayton. It's always great to talk about music and go down memory lane with some of these shows.
Fantastic. On this episode, we are discussing 3 albums: Eagles, Desperado, On the Border, from the greatest American rock band of the 1970s, Eagles.
And I found out a long time ago what a woman can do to your soul. Oh, but she can't take you anyway. You don't already know how to go. And I got a peaceful, easy feet. Don't you draw the queen of diamonds, boy. She'll beat you if she's able. You know the queen of hearts is always your best bet. Now it seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones that you can't get. Minding my business, along comes Big Brother. Said, son, you better get on one side or the other. I'm out on the border. I'm walking the line. Don't you tell me about your law and order. I'm trying to change this water to wine.
All right, let's hit some opening thoughts on the band. Mike, why don't you start us off?
I remember loosely about 1979, 1980, discovering the Eagles a little bit. And a friend of mine that was turning me on to them at the time was older than me, and she was trying to describe to me what they were. I was like, are they rock? And she's like, well, no. And I was like, are they country? She's like, well, no, but they are, and they're not. And, you know, it was kind of one of those things where I scratched my head, but then I started listening to it. And one of the things that floored me is, you know, they're the top 3 songs off of each of these 3 albums are well known. And I was like, okay, these guys are pretty cool. I like them a lot. So, you know, it's just, like I said, nice to go back down memory lane and revisit some of these things that I had from my childhood.
Very good. All right. How about you, Dave?
I discovered the Eagles after I got to college, which my freshman year started in the fall of 1989. I was not someone who explored music history very much in the 80s. I was very much into what was happening currently, for people my age. Got to college, was introduced to the Eagles through their greatest hits album, and fell in love with them. I mean, I loved them from the beginning. I think my introduction to them was their greatest hits volume 2.
Right.
And that's one I've owned forever and have listened to a million times. And I have to say that I didn't even realize this. I was not consciously aware of this until we started prepping for this episode. But much like I was with the Beatles a year ago, I was very familiar with the band. I knew I was a fan. I knew all their hit singles and loved all of them. But I had apparently just been content with their two greatest hits albums and had never bothered to explore their discography before. So this was largely a journey for me, listening to these albums and going through all the tracks. So it's been wonderful. I loved it. So I'm ready to dig in.
Sounds good. All right. Fantastic. So I had the benefit of having an older brother who listened to a lot of music, and my parents were fans of music, rock music from the 60s and the 70s. So I was very much aware of Eagles when I was a kid. One of my mom's favorite albums was Hotel California. So that was always, we had the vinyl at home, and I know at one point we had the cassette, and then so it was always around. Personally, I had the greatest hits like you, Dave. When I was a kid, I got it when I was first starting my tape collection, when I got my driver's license and went to the mall like twice a week and bought something every weekend or whatever. And as I got older and then I started building my CD collection, I got Hotel California. And like you, I was kind of content with that. And now as I started listening to more and more of, the singles, you hear those all the time, especially on classic rock radio. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I started building my vinyl record collection that I decided, you know what, I'm going to go buy all of their studio albums. And I've since done that. And I also have their live album, which is just called Live, which, by the way, is freaking fantastic. One of my top 7 live albums of all time. So it was when I acquired those albums that I first got a chance to listen to these all the way through. And there was definitely some surprises and some, let's just say they're good surprises. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, it was nice checking out these albums a couple years ago and also for this podcast. So I'm super excited to talk about them. And I was able to see them a few years ago and they were fantastic. Even then they did all of Hotel California from beginning to end, took a break, came back out and played for another 2 hours. So it was a fantastic show and they sounded, considering their age, they sounded really, really good. So
I was on board and very aware of their reunion in '94, and I was very excited for that. And they're a group that I'd never have seen live. It's one of my life's regrets that I didn't see them while Glenn Frey was alive.
Right, me too.
Remains to be seen if I'll still see them. I know several people, including you, that have seen them with Vince Gill and Deacon, and have said that they are amazing. It's hard for me to believe that it's really an Eagles experience, but despite all the things going for it, but everybody says they're absolutely amazing, and I should still see them. But I do regret that I haven't, and I didn't with Glenn still alive.
Right.
But I remember how big a deal that reunion was in '94, and thinking that this was like the least likely thing that was ever going to happen, and here it was happening. So it was just amazing to see that tour and that album happen.
Yeah, the Hell Freezes Over album and tour.
Yeah.
Because when they broke up, somebody asked if they ever going to get back together, and they said, when hell freezes over.
That's awesome.
So, all right. I'm going to do a quick band history before we get into the albums. Founding members, Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Randy Meisner, and Billy Leedon, all met while working with Linda Ronstadt. Some were touring members, but all performed on her third solo album. They set out on their own and formed in late '71. The band name... This is so much fun. The band name comes from a peyote and tequila-filled trip to the Mojave Desert. There are varying stories, but obviously, Don Felder, who was not in the band at the time, does credit Bernie Leedon and his interest in the Hopi Indians and their reverence for the eagle. Now, J.D. Souther claims it comes from Glenn Frey yelling "Eagles" after seeing them flying above while they were all stoned. Now, Steve Martin, yes, that's Steve Martin, recounts in his biography that he suggested they call themselves the Eagles, but Frey insisted on just Eagles. Weird. Anyway, here's some by the numbers for you. 5 number 1 singles, 6 number 1 albums, 6 Grammy Awards, 5 American Music Awards, over 200 million albums sold worldwide, inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998. In 2004, they were ranked number 75 on Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Artists of All Time. They popularized the country rock or Americana genre personally, and I said it earlier, I do consider them the best American rock band of the 70s. You know, I said 70s, Dave, so don't yell at me. Um, and
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm on
okay.
board.
So it's just one of those that if you see what they were able to accomplish in a relatively short amount of time and the level of talent in the band, and, you know, they truly were the sum of their parts. You know, I mean, yeah, Henley went off and had a pretty decent solo career, and so did Fry, but they never matched the level of when they were a solid band. So it was still good music. And yeah, them getting back together was probably a good thing for everybody. All right. Anybody have any trivia they want to throw out before we move on to the first album?
Just, you know, the fact that Felder came on late, you know, and he joined. I think they brought him in as a player on the Border, and then later extended the offer for him to join the band full time. And, you know, I think that was the right move because I definitely think it completed the band and made them better. But I
Agreed.
do want, it was Glenn Fry himself who extended that invitation. I do wonder if he lived to regret that, but since they so famously did not get along very well.
Well, I think it was the cocaine that was making it so they didn't get along very well, more than anything. So,
And I do know that when they were playing for Linda Ronstadt, it was her suggestion that they add Bernie to their lineup. And Bernie was somebody who was not in her outfit. And they extended an invitation for him to come play, you know, behind her with them. Just, you know, she arranged that so that they could all play together. So I think there was only like one show where they played live behind Linda Ronstadt, the four of them together.
right.
And then they decided to become the Eagles then. And to me, it's a little bit of a, you know, it was like her idea, and they brought him on and to be that final piece to get started. And obviously, they moved away from that sound, you know, in the middle of their career.
He was very much the influence in their country sound.
Yeah, he was the country guy. He was the banjo guy, and you know, obviously, they moved away from that. You know. I just wonder if it was really a good fit or not. I mean, obviously, I like these albums, I like these songs, but it's not their final sound, you know, what they became known for. So,
Well, there's always an evolution with a band, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it definitely worked in these three albums at the time. But yeah, I think I don't necessarily think, like I said, Felder was the issue, and you know, Leadon goes out, Walsh comes in. So if you think about that lineup, because even Timothy B. Schmidt comes in, Meisner, so they had a lot of shifting, you know, once you got to the Hotel California and the Long Run albums. So, you know, it is at that point, you only had two original members anyway.
yeah.
So, you know how that goes. So, all right, cool. Let's move on to the first album. It is self-titled.
Well, I'm standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona, and such a fine sight to see. It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me. Come on, baby, don't say baby. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. We may lose.
Released June 1st, 1972 on Asylum Records. Producer Glenn Johns turned down the job twice until he heard their vocal harmonies while performing an acoustic version of Meisner's Take the Devil. The album was a quick success, reaching number 2 on the Billboard 200 and reached platinum certification. 3 singles off the album all cracked the top 40. Take It Easy, written by Fry and Jackson Browne, hit number 12. Witchy Woman, written by Henley and Leadon, hit number 9. And Peaceful Easy Feeling, written by Jack Tempchin, was hit number 22. By the way, Take It Easy is on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's list of 500 songs that helped shape rock and roll. All right, opening thoughts on this album. Dave, why don't you go first?
Well, first of all 3 of those singles are monsters. I mean,
Yes, they are.
just absolute giants. They're among my favorite. All of their singles are among my favorite of anybody ever. So, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of room to really talk about them since everybody in the world knows these songs. They're all on the first volume of their greatest hits, which is like the greatest selling album ever. But they definitely picked the right songs off the album to be the singles, I think.
All right.
And I would say my only other opening comment for this album is that they didn't seem to know yet that Glenn Frey and Don Henley were going to be their two main lead singers. I mean, there's a lot of sharing of the lead vocals here. As a matter of fact, Meisner has more lead vocals than Henley does.
Right.
So, and it's pretty evenly spread around. So, it's definitely an early form of the Eagles. They definitely have some evolution ahead of them.
All right. How about you, Mike? Opening thoughts?
Well, I can't really add too much to it. I mean, what a great opening album. How boom, right out of the gates. Some of the most influential songs. I think that, we're going to get into later on. I think this album is influencing the comeback of mandolin and acoustic guitars that we've discussed in other episodes.
Right.
So, but listening to this and thinking, like, as a kid around 1972, right, when this one debuted.
71, yeah.
71. So, okay, let's just say 72 for fun. What a breakaway from what was going on at the time.
Right.
Nice way to kind of be that merger between country rock or rock country, however you want to put it. I don't think you peg it in either or, you let it go. But what a great sound to break out of. And, I think the Eagles ended up replacing the Beatles and something that, people could all get on board with as far as music goes. And this album opened the door up to that very, very substantially. It just kicked it. They kicked the door down. They didn't even open it. They just kicked the door down with this album.
Yeah, it's like they took the best parts of, say, the acoustic folk rock of like the 60s and whatever, and added some of the electric to it, which was going on. But this kind of took the rock we were getting, the not as heavy, like, you look at Zeppelin and stuff like that was going on at that point. They kind of, found the middle area between those two genres, and they added in the country, which made it sound its own. So I agree. They were definitely doing something very unique at the time, and did it very well. So as I mentioned before, it wasn't until actually I bought these albums on vinyl that I actually listened to all of them all the way through. So you can definitely hear Leedon's country influence on this album, very much so throughout the entire thing. The track listing is a good balance of country influenced, like Take It Easy and Train Leaves Here This Morning, alongside rock influenced tracks like Chug All Night and Tryin'. Speaking of track listing, side 1 is solid and it has a good flow. Side 2, not so much. Train Leaves Here in the Morning is the wrong way to start side 2. It kind of like doesn't kick it off with any kind of energy or whatever. You end side 1 so well, and you come over to this one, and it's kind of like, that's not how I wanted to start. I would have swapped Take the Devil with Train Leaves Here in the Morning, because I think that's a better fit. And Tryin' is a perfect closer. I think it's a great way to end the album, and was a surprisingly good song. So all in all, a very solid debut album for sure. We are already getting the great vocal harmonies that we come to know from the band for sure.
Yes.
And another thing I really enjoyed, and I've always enjoyed, is how they layer the guitar tracks, that complement each other. They're not doing the same thing. Like, you hear the banjo playing behind, or you can hear like there's one guitar playing a certain riff and there's another one kind of playing something underneath it. They're not doing the same thing, but they complement each other so well. And that was something that, you heard before, but for whatever reason, it just feels like they do it really, really well. And they know how it, what works, what complements the other one, and it works vocally too. Like, they have a lot of times with those guitar tracks will go along with the vocals during the verse and stuff like that. So they do a great example of that, and it's something we get to know a lot throughout their career. So another example is the banjo just behind the guitar track on Take It Easy. It's just there, you hear it, and it adds a nice little flavor for a very good, solid debut album.
I think one of the things too that you kind of hit on, Dayton, is these layerings that they were doing. Other bands had done it, but the Eagles did it in a way that they become the example.
Right.
Let's layer our guitars like the Eagles, even though bands before them had done it. So then the Eagles become the default example as this is how it should be done.
Right.
They didn't invent it, but they almost perfected it.
It's not an automatic thing that you can mix electric with acoustic and with like flavors of bluegrass country and have it work. And they totally nailed it. I mean, they just did it right.
Right.
I can enjoy bluegrass music. I can enjoy the mandolin and the banjo and all that stuff, and I do enjoy these tracks where Bernie's featured on that kind of stuff. But it's appealing to a part of me that's different from how the Eagles appeal to me. Like it's appealing to me for a different reason than what I think of the Eagles. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, the vocal harmonies, just that, Don Henley's voice, how he and Glenn Frey especially harmonize together. But, I'm going to love vocal harmonies, and the Eagles did it better than most. So that's as soon as you hear that, I'm going to be hooked.
Right. Obviously not from this album, but one of my favorite examples I share with people is like, find them doing Seven Bridges Road. Oh my God.
There are stars in the southern sky, southward as you go. There is moonlight and moss in the trees down the Seven Bridges Road.
It's absolutely perfection when it comes to vocals. It's just like,
I have goosebumps right now just because you said the name of the song.
I know, it's just absolutely glorious. It's just a fantastic,
You shoot it in my veins.
You're right. 100%. All right.
I'm going to push back a little bit. I like side 2 better than side 1. I know I can't say that. But this is a very solid album. The only track that falls flat for me is Most of Us Are Sad. I'm instantly bored by that one. I really am. But the others on here are fantastic. I hadn't considered switching the order of Train Leaves and Take the Devil, but I do agree now that you've said that. That would probably flow better. But side 2 doesn't miss. Every track lands for me. So, and the only one I don't like on the whole album is Most of Us Are Sad. And then Chug All Night falls a little bit flat for me. It just sounds a little too generic rock for me. All right.
We'll get there. We'll get to our duds. Hang on now.
Okay. He's preempting. Yeah.
He is. That's all right. That's okay. I think we might be agreeing on a few of those anyway. So that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start off with our favorite track that was not a single. So Mike, what's your favorite one that wasn't released?
I had 2 that I enjoyed, and Nightingale and Take the Devil.
Okay. Yeah, I have Nightingale on my list too. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a but I think Nightingale being written by Brown, what a solid songwriter, Jackson Brown.
Yes, he is.
A great lineage and stuff like that going on there. And Take the Devil, I just liked it. I think you nailed it when you said they should flip flop track 1 and track 2 on the backside.
Yeah. Well, it's also hearing that it was an important song to get the producer Glenn Johns to join because he heard them singing it, performing it. To me, that it should get proper placement anyway. I don't like kicking off side 2 or the beginning of an album with a slow song. It just kind of feels, it just feels a little wrong. So
yeah. So. And I think Take the Devil, one of the reasons why I picked it is it's a strong one, and it could have been maybe another single had the chance to be the first song on the backside.
Yeah, I could have seen it being a single for sure.
Okay, yeah. So that's my thoughts on that.
All right, Dave, favorite track that was not a single.
Well, it's hard not to echo that. Easily, my number 1 choice is Take the Devil. I think that song is fantastic. It is tons of fun. It's hitting the vibe. That's what I want. Take the Devil. Nightingale is was a discovery for me, and I do love it a lot. It didn't come out of the original sessions. When they came back to LA, there was only one Don Henley song on, lead vocal on the whole album. And this one got added after the fact just to make sure Henley had more of a presence on the album, which blows my mind. But,
right.
but I also like Trying. That was also a discovery for me. And that one kind of snuck up on me. When it first started, I was like, all right, look, we just got Peaceful Easy Feeling. That was the big finish. Why are we still listening to something on? But then, like, as the track went on, it was like, holy crap. I mean,
Yeah,
there is
right?
some guitar work on that song.
Yes, there is.
So those are my three, but Take the Devil's my number one.
Yeah, see, we already mentioned Nightingale, and Tryon was the one I really enjoyed. It came down between a tie between Nightingale and Tryon. It was a big surprise for me because, like I said, I hadn't listened to it until I actually acquired the album. As I mentioned before, it should have been. It's a great closer. It ties up the album really nicely. We get a nice taste of what we've already heard, but done just a little bit different. It leaves us wanting more. It kind of makes you want to go back to side one and track one. So the vocal track is complemented very well by the guitar track. Solid rock song that is 70s, but not so much that it feels dated. I think they did a great job finding that. I don't want to say timeless quality, but pretty close. So, but yeah, Tryon was definitely at the top of my list. All right, so any duds? We'll let Dave go again because he already started calling out a couple. So let's talk about Chug All Night because I do agree with you on that one. Okay, so I'll be honest. I really like the music, but the music is not good enough for me to distract me from the really bad lyrics. So that's why it's a dud for me. The other one I want to mention is Early Bird. As good as the music is, the sound effect, the bird sound effect completely kills that song. It's so distracting. If it wasn't for that, that'd be a fantastic song. But that stupid bird sound effect, I'm just like, please stop. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard. So those are.
I kept wanting to hit the fast forward button.
Yep.
No, listen to it, diligently so that you can make an honest opinion. But boom, the bird effects. No.
Yeah, that was a bad choice.
So I partially agree with you on that. When it starts off with just the birds, like I'm not down for that. Like I'm someone who, even with the Beatles' Blackbird, I wish that song would end before the bird effects came in on it. I don't like the bird effects, and I also get bad flashbacks to Muskrat Love.
Well, okay.
I mean, I guess in general, I don't need animal sounds on my music, but I don't like the early bird sound effects at the beginning of the track. But later in the song, when it's mixed in with the guitars and everything's driving and it's just kind of adding to the kinetic energy of the whole, I don't mind it there. It doesn't bother me as much there.
See, it still bothers me because it makes me think about the beginning of the song and how it affected me there. So it's just not quite good enough. But
and to your point about Chug All Night, to me it just sounds like just generic rock. Like it makes me think it could be like a soundtrack, like an opening song on a bad early 80s comedy soundtrack, like some college campus comedy
party,
like Animal House or like Kenny Loggins does the Caddyshack song. Like it sounds like it would just be on a bad 80s comedy soundtrack. So it falls flat, but I don't. The only one I skip is Most of Us Are Sad. That's the only one that I really just can't.
See, that one doesn't bother me too much, but I see your point. I do see your point. All right.
Yeah, I was just gonna nail Most of Us Are Sad down and say terrible.
Wow. Okay.
Drive. I'll hold the steak. You.
Yeah, no, I'm putting a steak there. Yeah, man, kill it. Steak in the heart. Put it to bed. Chug All Night is kind of a half-efforted song, and Dave kind of hit some of the points that I agree with. But then when Most of Us Are Sad, I'm like, man, what? Boom, boom, 1 track, 2 track. This is awesome. Okay, I can tolerate this. Oh man, this stinks. Not where I want to be at. So, yeah.
See, I see your point, but like I said, I think I'd rather listen to that than those chirping birds. And like I said, if I could ignore the lyrics for Chug All Night, because not only is it because I kind of feel like it's an attempt at a double entendre because both drinking and just having sex all night, and I'm just like, it to your point, Dave, it is so generic and so not clever at all, and I'm just like, okay.
I got the feeling that Glenn Frey just really wanted to be a rock star, and he was just, doing his best,
Yeah, and it's funny when you get a song like this early on, these kind of songs kind of go away. You know what I mean? It's like they leave them behind by the time, especially by the time you get to Hotel California and stuff like that. It's, you know, I mean, yeah, there's love songs and stuff like that, but there's nothing stupid.
Yeah.
And there's nothing childish or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They-
I don't know.
They hadn't grown into it yet. They were still
Right.
kind of playing at it a little bit.
They're still
Yeah.
kids. I mean, they're still
Yeah.
kids. Let's be honest. So
This is their debut album. Absolutely, yeah.
And
Right.
I mean, let's don't trash the album. I mean, oh my Lord, it's incredible.
no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that by far. You got to get your feet wet. So
Yeah.
all right. Anything else on the debut album before we move on? All right, cool. Album number 2.
It's another tequila sunrise, staring slowly across the sky. Said goodbye. He was just a hired man, working on the dreams he planned to try.
Desperado, released April 13th, 1973, recorded at Island Studios in London, England. The album reached number 41 on Billboard, a bit of a disappointment compared to their debut. 2 songs were released off the album. Tequila Sunrise, written by Henley and Fry, it hit number 64. Outlaw Man, written by David Blue, hit number 59. The title track was never released as a single, but has become a staple of their live shows for years. The album was certified gold in September of 1974 and eventually went double platinum in March 2001. The writing partnership of Henley and Fry solidified on this album, accounting for 8 of the 11 tracks. Initially intended to be a concept album about anti-heroes, but once songs ran out, it shifted to the outlaw Western theme. The song James Dean was written for this album, but was moved to the next album because it didn't fit the Western theme. Speaking of theme, the theme was suggested by Jackson Browne, of all people, of course, because he always seems to be around. It was based on a book on gunfighters, Wild West, that was given him by friend Ned Doheny. It contains stories of the Doolin Dalton gang, obviously inspiring the song that opens the album. And I do really like the theme. I think it's really nice. I like the cover and the picture on the back as well. Apparently, since it was such an expensive photo shoot to do all the Western stuff, they actually did a promotional film at the same time. I haven't been able to find it, but I'm sure I can find it on YouTube if I keep digging hard enough. So I really enjoyed the fact that they went with this Western theme, and it's a very good cohesive group of songs that fit the theme, even though there's different topics throughout the album as well. It's not all about just robbing banks and Old West or whatever. They found different stories to tell within that theme. So I thought that was very, very clever. All right, opening thoughts on this particular album. Mike, why don't you go first?
I have a hard time believing it was such a commercial bomb, or not a bomb, but it just wasn't received as well.
See, I kind of disagree. I kind of totally see why it didn't do as well as the first one.
Okay.
But go ahead. Defend your point. I'm curious.
You know, it's not a bad follow up, and I think
No.
it's a, I don't want to call it a concept album, but I mean they were going with a theme,
Right.
and you know, I'm like, okay, this is it. They took on a little bit more bluegrass, I think, in this album,
Right.
Which, like I said, I think their influence is still being felt with you know, the bands that are coming out now with some of the same sound and some of the same instruments. So I liked it. You know, I mean, I'm liking the revival of banjos and mandolins and harmonicas and stuff like that, and rock country genre.
Okay.
So I like this album coming out. I had no problem with it.
Okay. All right, Dave.
I do like it, and I like the cowboy outlaw theme, and I think that does help kind of solidify our image of the band, at least this era of the band. And I think I agree with you, Dayton, on saying that it was a nice collection of songs that all kind of fit thematically. And I think to that end, that the album as a whole is better than the sum of its individual parts, because it's taken as a concept. I think it's okay to call it a concept album. You know,
Yeah.
just zoom out and it paints a picture.
Right.
But when you start breaking it down and go, where are the big commercial hits? There's not a lot of them on here.
No.
So to me, I understand why it didn't do quite as well, and I don't think I like it as much as their debut. But you know, as a concept album, I'm on board. I still like it. So there's like it's hard to pinpoint what doesn't work, but just overall it seems more middling, I think.
Okay.
Just despite the presence of Tequila Sunrise and Desperado, those are the two giants that came out of this. Despite the fact that Outlaw Man was a single and Desperado wasn't,
Right.
but it comes down to what was included on their greatest hits album, the one that sold everywhere.
Right.
Desperado is on that, and Outlaw Man's not. So it's hard for me to get my head around the fact that Outlaw Man was a single because it was a brand new discovery for me as I was listening to this.
Yeah. See, initially, I guess the idea, since they had commercial success, Fry wanted to prove they could be artists. So they wanted to focus more on theme and different ideas as far as musically speaking, which is, this is the first time we get them bringing back a song and doing a reprise or whatever, which, they come back to later, even on Hotel California. And so here's my thing with the album. I do like it. I'm not going to say I don't. There are really good songs on the album. Obviously, Tequila Sunrise, Desperado. I even really like, Outlaw Man. There's lots of songs in here I like. The opening track, Dueling Dalton, is cool. I like the way it opens. I don't think we need the instrumental before Outlaw Man. I think it's kind of just a filler. And the end, when we come back to Dueling Dalton and Desperado again, it's interesting, but it also kind of feels like filler. So I think that is my biggest issue. As a concept album, I see the point. As a theme, I see the point. But you're right, Dave. It as a full album, it's the sum of its parts. But yeah, if you sit down and take them individually, you can definitely find the ones that aren't as strong. They stick out way much more. And the track listing to me is a little wonky, but I do like how a lot of the songs fade together instead of fade out and fade in, because I kind of, embraces the theme as well. It's kind of interesting. Make sure you remember that, hey, these all songs kind of go together. So, but yeah, because of all that, I can see why it wasn't as successful, because I think the singles aren't as great as the first album. So I think that's what it suffers from overall. All right. Let's hit favorite track that wasn't a single. Dave, why don't you go first?
Are we counting Desperado? Because
yeah, it was. I mean, to be fair, it was not released as a single. If you want to call that one, cool.
I feel like that's a little bit of a cheap answer because everybody in the world knows it. It was on the greatest hits. Obviously, it's a classic. So if that's the low hanging fruit, I guess I'll take it. But as far as the album tracks that I was not already familiar with, I love Outlaw Man.
Yep.
And I love Bitter Creek. Bitter Creek hits my target. So those are my two fun discoveries. I don't know how, I was already familiar with Dueling Dalton track.
Right.
And just to your point, we've already said it, all three instances of Dueling Dalton on this album work in terms of putting together the album as a single work.
Right.
As a concept, but they're not going to be they're not going to run a playlist. They're not going to be a radio hit. And so, just to wrap it back around, Outlaw Man and Bitter Creek are my answer. Those were the two on here that really jumped out at me and that I'm glad that I know about now.
Yeah, like you said, they did a great job finding different stories to tell within the theme, and Bitter Creek definitely hits that mark. That was a surprise for me the first time I heard it, and I really like it too. So, I
will tell you though, my opinion of 21 increased after I understood that it was talking about a historical, actual member of the Dueling Dalton gang who was gunned down at the age of 21. So once I understood that, I was able to appreciate the song a little bit more.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
All right. All right. Mike, favorite track that wasn't a single?
Yeah, I'm going with Bitter Creek. I was pleasantly surprised with. I didn't like the instrumental where it landed. I don't know if it was needed or not needed yet. I don't know, but I like Bitter Creek. I think it fit in well, and it leads into another instrumental / reprise of Desperado, and I think it was a decent place. You had to end the album with the reprise, so I think Bitter Creek fits in where it kind of came in. Maybe they could have put it at number one instead of Certain Kind of Fool. But I
Yeah.
don't. I think they were well, you nailed it though. The track list is a little bit wonky, so they could have moved some of these songs around and maybe made a better album out of it. But I don't know what Glenn Fry and some of the others, were really trying to story tell.
Right. Right.
And
I get that.
maybe that's a shame. Maybe that's because maybe it was the studio got behind and said, no, this is the tracks that we're gonna put in the order and stuff like that. Maybe it got destroyed. Maybe the story being told is jumbled up versus what the band originally wanted. I don't know, but yeah, it seems a little bit wonky. But Bitter Creek, is my favorite that fell out of it. That wasn't Tequila Sunrise or Desperado.
All right. All right. Well, I'm glad you didn't pick mine because I only had one for this album, and that was Out of Control. That was a shock to me. I mean, what an awesome rockin' track it is. It took me by surprise.
Mhm.
And the aggressive drum track is really cool. I love the rocking guitars. And Meisner's bass track is really killer. It's just, I don't know. It was one of those songs I'm like, this is the Eagles. It was a little bit more rock than I was expecting, especially at this point. So
It was my number 2 pick, but
all right.
I'm glad you touched it because yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good song. It was, like I said, it's a little more rock than the rest of the album. So I really like that.
Right.
All right. Let's move on to any duds. Mike, was there anything for you that just didn't work?
I kind of hinted to it a little bit. The instrumental, Duel and Dalton by itself instrumental.
Right.
I don't know. It just kind of feels a little forced in there.
Yeah.
Because when they come back to it on track 6, I'm okay with it there. So yeah, that's the one I would I'd pull it out. It's only like 40 seconds long anyways,
Yeah, it's just there,
Yeah,
it's just there, and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help the next song. So it's just there. So
yeah, just pull it off like a Band-Aid,
All right. So to Dave's point about 21, just nope. Nope. I don't care what it's based on. I don't care that it's based on an actual person. No, it leans a little bit too much into country, and I struggle with the country genre to begin with, which is surprising considering how much I love this band. But it's a little too much Bernie Leadon. Let's just put it that way. It's just a little bit too much from him. And no, that song was the one I'm just like, I've heard enough. I'm moving on to the next one. All right, Dave. Any duds for you?
Well, not a dud, but one that I had put in the same category as Chug All Night as just sounding a little too generic was Out of Control. So,
really?
But I'm not here to hate on it.
Right.
To hear both of you praise it is enough for me to go back with an open mind and see if I can change my assessment of it. But that one just kind of goes past me when I'm listening to the album. So I'll try to be better about that. I'll see what I can come up with. But as far as there's 2 that fall flat for me and one that I will just always skip. And that skipper is going to be Certain Kind of Fool. That it doesn't do anything for me.
Okay.
Just like most of us are sad, it's a Randy Meisner song, and I like Randy Meisner, and I like what he brings to the band in the vocal blend and all that.
Right.
But these are, the 2 duds on these 2 albums are both his songs. The other one that falls a little flat for me is Saturday Night, but I don't want to skip it.
Yeah, that one I kind of agree. It's not. I can deal with it a lot more than 21. It's not great, but it's not. Yeah, I don't mind it so much. But yeah, it's definitely it's not great. And like I said, if you compared to the first one, you can definitely see that there was a lot of swings and a lot of misses on this album. So
yeah.
All right. Anybody want to mention anything else before we move on to the third album?
Oh, I just want to say this. As a concept album, I still like it. I think it works as a concept album. It just doesn't blow you away as a rock fan, right? It's not why we love the Eagles. It makes me think about Young Guns 2 and how John Bon Jovi provided the soundtrack, right? And it's like, this could be an awesome soundtrack album to a very cool Western, And I found out that Sam Peckinpah wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Peckinpah was on board to make a Desperado movie that was going to use this album. For whatever reason, that deal didn't come together, but I think that would have been a lot of fun.
Man, I would have watched that movie so many times because I love the Wild Bunch and I love Peckinpah, so I would have been all in on that one for sure. So,
That would have been cool.
That would have been very cool. All right, album number 3, On the Border. Some facts here. Released March 22nd, 1974. Glenn Johns, who produced the first 2 albums, has 2 producer credits on this album, but was replaced by Bill Simchek. I'm going to say Simchek. That's how I'm going to say it because I can't. Because the band wanted a more rock and roll sound. This is the first lineup change with the addition of Don Felder. The founding members, Henley, Fry, Meisner, and Leeden, stayed intact for now. The album reached number 7 on the Billboard and has sold over 2 million copies. Singles off the album include Already Gone, Jack Tempchin again, and Rob Strandland reached number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100. James Dean, written by Henley, Fry, Brown, and J.D. Souther, who we just lost a few weeks ago, hit number 77, which makes a lot of sense considering how I feel about that song. Best of My Love, written by Henley, Fry, and Souther, was their first number 1 single. It's the first album to be released in quadraphonic sound, the first Eagles album, sorry. And on some vinyl LPs, the quote, "He who hesitates is lunch," is carved into the run out groove. I would love to find one of those. The song My Man was written by Leeden in honor of his friend Graham Parsons. All right, opening thoughts for this album. Dave, why don't you go first?
Of the 3 we're talking about tonight, this one's easily my least favorite.
What?
I think.
Whoa. Sorry. Can I get a spoiler warning next time? Damn.
Honestly, there's by my count, if I got this right, there's 10 tracks on the album. I only like half of them, which is the lowest rate of these 3. So now the 5 tracks that I like a lot. Again, this is my 3rd favorite band of all time. There are some treasures on here.
Okay.
But there are also an equal number of misses.
Wow. Okay. That was a hot take for sure. I was not expecting that.
And now you got me nervous that I'm making a fool of myself, but I am just going to stick with it.
Hey, no, man. It's all good. It's all good. All right. Mike, opening thoughts on this album.
I think it's a good recovery to what critics might have considered a not so great sophomore album.
Right.
So, and you've got some really good songs. And of course, Best of My Love was one of their most successful songs at the time. I like you on James Dean. I'm kind of, we'll go to James Dean in a second.
We'll get there. Yes, we will.
Yeah, we'll get there. I do, one of the songs that I like, and I'll get to this again as well, is, Tom Waits contributing.
Yep.
I'm a big Tom Waits fan, and I like that they pulled him in on this one here and had some collaboration, and I like where it went.
All right. So I'm going to disagree with Dave a lot, so I'm just going to get it out of the way right now. This album really shows that they were hitting their groove. The songwriting quality, lyrical and musically, is all level up over the previous 2 albums. We're getting some more serious topics, and I appreciate that. Seeing more of their strengths and talent coming through to the service. Old 55 vocal harmonies are my favorite harmonies on the entire album. Not necessarily the song, but that chorus almost brings me to tears every time. I love singing along to it. I have the music really loud so nobody can actually hear me because I don't want to do that to anybody because yikes. But those vocal harmonies are one of the reasons why we love this band because there's a flow to it, the melody to it, and I don't care what the song's about. That chorus is perfection. The only track listing issue is actually Best of My Love should not be the final song on the album. Yes, it's their number one hit, but like I said before, I have issue going out on a slow song. Personally, I think they should have flipped it with Good Day in Hell because I enjoy that song. It's a little bit more with the rest of the album. So I think that should have been the closer. In my opinion, it's actually the most complete album of the three. So sorry, Dave, we're not going to agree on this one.
That's all right. That's all right.
All right. Anything else? Opening thoughts before we move on to our favorite track?
I do think it's more of a traditional, straightforward album, more hitting our expectations of what we want than Desperado is. I mean, I'll give you that. I definitely it's more like a normal album in that way. And I think we only have Felder on 2 tracks here, and they are 2 of my favorite.
Makes sense.
And obviously, he's an extremely important part of the mix and completes the band. Well, I mean, and I'm getting into Joe Walsh, but you know what I mean? Like the Felder was not a founder, and here he is coming in and we need him. So it's good to have him on these tracks.
All right. So favorite track that was not a single. Mike, why don't you go first?
Well, I kind of hinted to Old 55. It's a good Tom Waits song, which Tom Waits didn't like the version of it that they did. He's not a big Eagles fan to start off with. And that's fine because, he can have his own opinion and, we all either love or hate Tom as well, too. So, no, I liked the harmonies, like you said. That's what kind of I was listening to it, and when they started kicking it out, I was like, man, this is actually pretty good. I'm getting into it really nice. I like the use of the steel pedal guitar,
right?
Which again, they were merging sounds and instruments that weren't getting played by rock stations on FM radios, and I think that's cool. They're people didn't realize they were listening to such a strong country influence when I think. Or maybe they did. I don't know. But anyways, there was no backlash to this being too country.
Right. All right. I agree with that. Yeah. Like I said, I struggle with country music, and the fact that I love this band so much shows that you can take those elements, you can take those instruments and merge them into rock music and make it work because they did it for years. So yeah, absolutely. All right. So Dave, favorite track that was not a single.
Let me see. Looking over this. Okay, the clear winner is Good Day in Hell. Holy crap, I love that. I love that song.
Yeah, that was my honorable mention if somebody else picked out mine.
My honorable mention as well. So
yeah, it's a great song. Great song.
Yeah, and Felder is on that track, and it really hits. I love it. Midnight Flyer was another good discovery for me. I enjoy it. I didn't know it before. But those are my 2 discoveries, and easily my favorite of them is Good Day in Hell.
Yeah, Good Day in Hell is a great song. It's written about the music business, which makes it even funnier. The chorus vocals are super awesome, and I'm with the addition of Felder, you can tell because the guitar is a little bit heavier, and as well as the drums too. So this is the solo, which of course is Felder, is really strong as well. So great choice. I'm glad nobody picked mine. But actually, my favorite song on the whole album is the title track, On the Border, inspired by the Watergate scandal and the fears of government invading citizens' privacy. So initially, Henley wanted it to be more of an R&B style song, and he admits that they missed the mark, but I don't care. I think it's really, really cool. The guitar tones are a bit more aggressive and cool. The flow of the chorus is really nice. And personally, this should have been a single. I'm surprised it wasn't. I think it's on par with the other ones. I mean, yeah, it might not be a number 1, but I think it's a top 40 hit for sure. So,
it's radio ready. They put that single level of production into it. It sounds finished and polished.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's underrated on this album, and it was between Good Day in Hell and On the Border, my 2 honorable mentions. So I've followed you on this one, Dayton, a lot. And I wonder, going back to Good Day in Hell, since we kind of touched on it a little bit, and we're going to touch on James Dean here in a second. But I think if we would have moved either On the Border or Good Day in Hell on the first track on the backside, maybe one of those spun out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So track placement on those two songs, I think, hurt them and helped the other song that we're going to talk about next.
All right. So moving on to duds. Mike, why don't you go first with yours? Because I think we share one.
Well, James Dean, I always thought was annoying. I love James Dean. I like the actor, but just that James Dean, I just can't get into it.
I love the opening of the song. The opening is really awesome. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great, and then it kicks into that, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's not where I heard this song going, and it ruined it for me completely. So yeah,
right. So I think we can all. It's an easy poo-poo one, but I'm even going to go a little bit further and even say, "Is It True?" was one that I was kind of like, yeah, I'm sitting on the fence, but again,
see, that
James
one,
Dean's just a stinker.
See, that one doesn't bother me.
Okay.
So all right, Dave, stinker or a dud for you?
Multiple choice.
All right, well, go ahead. Throw out a couple.
Get out the flamethrower.
I don't, I'm right down the middle of this album. I only hate half of it. I mean, hate is too strong a word. Hate is too strong a word. But
I dislike strongly.
They missed for me. Let me put it that way. I don't hate them. They just miss.
All right, gotcha.
So James Dean, swing and a miss.
Yep.
Never Quite Like a Lover, swing and a miss. My Man, swing and a miss. Is It True? Swing and a miss. That's a lot of misses for an album.
All right.
It's hard for me to get past that.
Wow. All right. Yeah. See, I don't. Like I said, the one we agree on was definitely James Dean. I just can't. So, see, now I'm going to feel bad because the one I really don't like is Midnight Flyer.
Okay.
I know you did.
That's all right.
It's just still too much country for me. It's a little bit too it leans too much into that, and it's not that it's a bad song. I mean, there's lots of elements in it that are good, and you can tell it's pretty well written. But for me, I'm like, out of everything on this album, this is the one song that I just don't want to listen to. When it comes on, I'm like, okay. Like when I'm listening to the vinyl, I won't skip it, but if I'm streaming it, I'm just gonna next,
Right.
So, but and I like My Man. I'm a little surprised. I kind of liked it. I mean, I think I like that one because I can feel like there's some heart to it because we know what it's written about. You can tell there's an emotion to that song, and I think that makes it a little bit better than it actually is, because I kind of feel like there's a story behind it, and knowing what happened, his friend passed away, you can tell. So that one doesn't bother me. The other ones you mentioned, I'm kind of like, yeah, they're not great, but I will take any of them over Midnight Flyer and James Dean. So
I'm definitely not putting Midnight Flyer in the same category as James Dean. I enjoyed discovering it. Like I said earlier, it's the kind of thing where the part of me that it appeals to is not the same part of me that the Eagles appeal to.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Makes sense.
It's not what I want from the Eagles necessarily, but as a song, I enjoyed discovering it.
All right. All right. Anything else on this album before we move on to our final word and ratings? All right, cool. So, Dave, why don't you sum up your opinions and final words on these three albums, and then go ahead and rate each one. Debut album first, Desperado, On the Border, scale of 1 to 5 albums. So anything you want to say, and then go ahead and rate them.
Well, again, On the Border, the 5 tracks that I love. Mm-hmm. And then there's 5 that I can do without. So it's right down the middle for me. It's 50-50. So I will give it 2.5. 2.5 albums, you're saying? So right. I'll go there. Desperado, it's I like it. I'll give it a 0.5 point for just the executing the concept, but it's still, not something that blows me away. So I'm going to go 3 on that one.
All right.
And then for the debut album, I'm going to sleep in the desert with 4 stars all around me. I'm going 4 on Eagles.
All right. Very good. All right, Mike, how about you?
Well, one of the things that I kind of wanted to point out, and I've hinted at a little bit, is the Eagles for these 3 albums got them started, and they ruled the 70s. And then that sound kind of faded out. But and I think Dayton, sometimes maybe you need to experience a little bit more. But we did the Billy Strings episode.
Yes, we did, and it was a good album.
And I think you can feel the Eagles' influence with some of the resurgent musicians like Billy Strings, a little bit of Tyler Childers. They're bringing back those instruments and what a lot of people say, oh, it's original country music again. But I think again, you wouldn't have a Billy Strings without the Eagles.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of my one thought on the Eagles. As far as rating them, the self-titled debut, Eagles, I liked a lot. I would have been thrilled having heard one of the songs on the radio and rushing to, the record mart and buying the album and discovering all the other tracks, because I think they all were solid. Desperado, yeah, we hit on it. So, well, let me go back to Eagles. I'm going to give it a 4 for a debut. It was a great
Okay.
4 out of 5. Desperado, I liked it. I had no problems with it. I give it a 3.5. It did backslide a little bit. And then I think On the Border came back and revitalized what we knew about them. And like you said, Dayton, I think they finally had their chops in songwriting. They'd cut their teeth and they were ready for this album. They were more polished with their songwriting. And then the addition to the new bandmate, no, it wasn't Felder. Who was it?
Yeah, it was Felder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of confusing myself. I think that was just a nice little touch, and it kept them from maybe getting stale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it revitalized them a little bit. And then, of course, they came back out with other albums that were even greater and big, huge successes and stuff like that. But On the Border, I'm going to give it a 4 as well too. I think if you were to kind of maybe do like a ZZ Top 6-pack or something like that, and combine all 3 of them on like a giant album that you could get, I would give it a 3.5 for all 3 combined.
Okay. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Sure.
All right, so we're actually Mike, you and I are pretty close on these. So these albums show the songwriting growth as they should, and they are definitely a solid foundation for what was up on the horizon at that point. All 3 are solid, entries for the most part. They're not as good as what we know is coming, but you can see what's coming. You can see the talent and everything else in there. So they are definitely worth your time to listen to. They are more than just the singles off those albums. So for me, the debut album is a 3.5. It's a very good effort, and for the most part is done pretty well. Desperado, I give it a 3 because the ones that are really good, and the ones that are bad don't completely ruin it. So I'll give it a 3. And On the Border, I think, is, like I said before, I think it's the most complete of the 3 albums for me. So I give it a 4. I don't, none of these are stinkers. None of these are like, whatever. I'm thrilled to have all 3 of them in my collection. So it's nice to see a foundation for what was, for such a great band and such a classic band for sure. So they are definitely worth your time and to listen to.
I like what you said about how we got all the building blocks. By the time we get to the end of this 3rd album, almost all of the pieces are in place.
Right.
All we're missing is Joe Walsh, right? So there's the sound of the band, Felder's on board, and the vocal harmonies and the songwriting partnership. Like, all the pieces are lined up. It would be completed with Joe Walsh joining the lineup. So these 3, like, what an amazing debut, a strong debut.
Right.
But this is like phase 1. These 3 comprise phase 1 of the Eagles, and it leaves us at a spot where we're ready to take it to the next level.
Nicely put. I like that. Phase 1. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and to your point earlier about the greatest hits album, there is some debate of whether it's the most number one selling album of all time. That and Michael Jackson's Thriller. Some people say it shouldn't count because it's their greatest hits album. That's fine. And let's be honest, that in the 70s and even into the early 80s, they weren't really tracking sales. They were tracking how many were shipped from the warehouse to the record stores and things like that. So to me, I'll still say that their greatest hits is the number one selling album of all time. But if I was going to lose, I don't mind losing to Michael Jackson's Thriller. That's an okay one to lose to. So,
And I think it was their greatest hits albums that were the Eagles to an entire generation. Like,
yeah,
I came up through the '80s, and like we didn't have any thought or concern or care about finding all the studio albums. We had these two amazing best-selling albums, and that's all we needed. And it was such a success to an unprecedented level that I feel like the gap of awareness between their hit singles and their album tracks is much wider for them than it is for a lot of bands. And ironic, considering how they're considered just about by everybody as one of the greatest bands we have ever had come out of this country.
right. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic discussion, gentlemen. I'm glad we were able to get this one in the can this time around. Honestly, this was a last minute idea. I was honestly listening to these albums, and actually I made a playlist as I do with my favorite bands. I just put all their albums in order into a playlist, and I was listening to it and I was like, you know what? We have not done an Eagles episode since the very first month this podcast started, and that was on Hotel California. That album was also mentioned on our top 7 albums of the 70s. Dave and I both had that as our number one. And so to me, I was kind of upset with myself that we have not gone back to the Eagles well. So that's the main reason why we're discussing it now. So we'll call it a bonus episode for December, a kind of a early Christmas present for everybody. So, but it's always a good time to talk about the Eagles for sure. So,
Why not get some stocking stuffers?
That's right. There you go. Yeah, there's plenty of great stuff. Actually, I have a book on my Christmas list about a biography on the Eagles on my Christmas list. So I'm hoping that ends up in my stocking this year. So, and I do have the documentary too that Brad from A Film Buy recommended to me a few years ago. I had picked up that. So
yes, I was going to mention that there's a 3-hour history of the Eagles documentary that everybody should see. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm building a collection. Like I have a section of sci-fi books on one side of my studio, and the other side is all music and movie nonfiction. So I'm adding to that. It's a battle between the two, and right now the movies and music nonfiction books are actually winning. So oh well, that's okay. It's not a bad thing. All right. As always, thanks, Mike, for being here. Appreciate it.
Great time. Always a good time.
And Def Dave, thanks. You bring the energy as always.
Thanks. I think that's a compliment.
It is. It's a compliment.
Yeah. I love it. I always love it. Anytime you want me back, I'm here.
Fantastic. All right. Also, I'd like to take a moment to thank our listeners for spending time with us. What do you think about the Eagles? What do you think about these 3 albums? You know what? If you haven't listened to them, take a listen and let us know what you think. Rate, review, and share the podcast on social media, and share any opinions you have of whatever we're discussing. And you can even make a suggestion for something you want us to cover. And hopefully we can get to it, because we're working on next year already. And if you really want to help out the podcast and help offset the cost of running the podcast, join us over on Patreon. We have bonus episodes over there. We have album reviews and movie reviews over there that didn't quite make the cut over here. And we also have sometimes, and when I get a chance, some behind the scenes videos so you can see what we look at and our reactions to stupid things we say. So it's a lot of fun. And we do have a 7-day free trial, so you can sign up for that and check out what we have, and hopefully join after that. So check us out over there. Appreciate it. Also, so next year we are rapidly approaching 2025. So we are returning to Sci-Fi Month that we did last January. It was a big success. We're doing one movie from the 50s, one from the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And then we're having a versus episode as well. We are discussing Godzilla from 1954, The Time Machine from 1960, Time After Time from 1979, and The Dark Crystal from 1982. And we're doing a versus episode on The Thing from Outer Space versus The Thing, 1951 through 1982, because of course the latter wasn't inspired by the previous one. So that's going to be a great month of science fiction movies, kind of see how sci-fi and it aged over the years. It was a big success last year, so we're going back to that again. Some of our podcast friends have actually reached out to us and suggested some titles. Russ from the Infectious Groove Music YouTube channel, he's coming back, and we are discussing Who's That Girl, the Madonna film from the 80s. I have never seen that before, so that's going to be a new one for me. And Bill and Jason from the All 80s Movies podcast, they're coming back, and we are discussing District 9 and Darkman. So those are going to be fun to discuss. And also, we have a new series. We're doing Disney Through the Decades. We look at what happened each decade and focus on one specific animated feature. That's going to be great. And also for that, we have not chosen our 1970s film. We are actually going to have a poll on Patreon and a free link to that poll. And you can help us pick which Disney animated film from the 70s we discuss. So look for that in the show notes. Look for that on our social media as well. Also, we have a lot of my favorites that we're looking to cover next year. We have some suggestions from our other hosts. We're covering some more books, more top sevens, and some other surprises. So we have a lot already planned for next year and super excited about it already. Do yourself a favor and listen to more music. And remember, physical media is better than streaming. The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson. Recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.